welcome to week 24 of 2025. We've read some amazing passages, and I'm excited to dive in deeper with you today. So let's recap the reading from June the 9th to June the 15th. This covers 1 Kings 12 through 16 and 2 Chronicles 10 through 16. I want to remind you that this is not necessarily a chronological plan that we're reading, but it does fit chronologically as far as Kings and Chronicles. So we're not reading them straight through, but we're going to read them intermittently so that we can read them within the entire narrative of the story. So we're also going to read Song of Solomon 1 through 8 and finish that book. We've got Psalm 94, Ecclesiastes 10 through 12. We finished that book and we talked about it last week. We've got Ephesians 5 through 6. We finished that up. We talked about it last week. Philippians 1 through 4. We finished that. And then we start Colossians 1. So we're finishing a lot of books because the New Testament has some short reads. And so does the wisdom literature. So we're going to fly through. Okay, let's dive into 1 Kings 12 through 16. It's really hard for me to overstate the importance of this chapter here in chapter 12. Here's what's happening. We've got the Davidic line. You've got David and then Solomon and Solomon's son Rehoboam with an R. So Rehoboam reigns over all of Israel, but 10 of the tribes get disgruntled over the taxation. And so they raise up a leader, Jeroboam with a J, to go and talk to Rehoboam to see if he'll lighten the tax load. And Rehoboam says no. Well, then the 10 tribes rebel and make Jeroboam, son of Nebat, their leader, and they break off from the other two tribes, which are Judah and Benjamin, who remain faithful to the house of David and Rehoboam. So this makes the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Here's what's amazing is that Israel is never unified again in this way, never again, because Assyria comes and they conquer the northern kingdom and they assimilate them. They disperse them throughout all of the Assyrian territory and make them talk like Assyrians, walk, act, and eat like Assyrians. And so all of those 10 tribes are lost and they're never recovered. So eventually Babylon then comes and conquers the southern kingdom, and those that return to Israel are mostly Benjamin and Judah. Eventually, under the Hasmonean rule with the story of the Maccabees, you see a united Israel, but we are missing those 10 tribes that Jeroboam leads into sin. Another thing about Jeroboam, he's known as Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and he doesn't want all of his people going out of his territory to the southern kingdom and to Jerusalem to worship. So he sets up 2 places of worship in the northern kingdom, one in Bethel and one in Dan. And very interestingly, he puts golden calves at these 2 places. This should remind you of Exodus 32, when Aaron sets up a golden calf, which it symbolizes Israel breaking covenant with God and idolatry. And we know that idolatry is what eventually leads Israel to be conquered, to be assimilated, to be dispersed. And so Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he sins by leading Israel into idolatry with these golden calves in Dan and Bethel. And this is huge. So when you read, because you will, the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, you'll read that phrase over and over. What it's talking about is these golden calves in Bethel and Dan, where Jeroboam makes the people of Israel worship. So mark this down. This is a real turning point in the narrative. Okay, let's move on then to the Song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon is attributed, of course, to Solomon, but it can be a little bit controversial because of the themes, but also because it never mentions God. But I want to give you a little bit of a different perspective, if you will. We have a lot of description of the covenant between God and his people that's described as rational or legal. Think of the law in the Torah. So it's this legal contract, and it's very logistical. And this is another take on the relationship between God and Israel, because this is one of marital intimacy. It's very dramatic. There's a lot of love and intimate language. And so sometimes when you read it, it's like, oh my goodness, what am I reading? But what we're reading is a poetic description of God's love for Israel and later Christ's love for the church. So it's another facet to that covenant, if you will. If you think of it kind of like a diamond, it shines in a lot of really beautiful different ways. So it's wisdom literature, it's poetry. And because it is a drama that's played out, it can't be broken up into a structure like a normal narrative that's recounting like a history would be broken up. But we can kind of structure it in this way. So you've got human mutual desire. You've got mutual desire in chapters 1 and 2, and then courtship and separation in 3 through 5. Praise and reconnection in 6 through 7, and then a final commitment in chapter 8. Here are some outstanding and well-known verses from the Song of Solomon. You've got Song 2:4 that says, his banner over me is love. This reminds me of that song that I sang in Sunday school. He is the vine and we are the branches. His banner over me is love. Did you know that song? Then you've got Song 2:16, my beloved is mine and I am his. And then finally, Song 8, 6 through 7, that says, love is as strong as death. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. So finally, let's move to the book of Philippians, and then we'll finish Colossians next week. Philippians is it's beautiful language. It's very pastoral. You can tell that Paul really loves this church at Philippi, which is a Roman colony in Macedonia. And he has developed a very fatherly relationship with them, if you will. And so it's written in AD 60 through 62, somewhere in there. And it's written to encourage, think, and exhort the believers there. And he expresses joy and gratitude. One of the things that I love about this book is that Paul talks about joy, and he's writing it from prison, likely in Rome. So he's in prison, but he's talking about joy. And this is really important because it reminds us that joy is a choice. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit that we see in Galatians chapter 5. So happiness is fleeting. You eat your favorite meal and you're happy, or something good happens and you're happy. But joy can be obtained in all circumstances, whether you're on the mountaintop or in the valley, whether you're with your friends at the church in Philippi or you're in a terrible Roman prison. That joy is something to be attained all of the time through the working of the Holy Spirit. Here's a structure for us. We've got greetings and thanksgiving in chapter 1, verses 1 through 11. We've got Paul's imprisonment and the advancement of the gospel in 1:12 through 30. Christ's example and a call to humility in 2:1 through 30. We've got warnings against legalism and pressing toward the goal in 3:1 through 21. And then we've got final exhortations and thanks in chapter 4:1 through 23. Here's a couple of notable verses that I want to point out to you. Philippians 1:6, he who began a good work will carry it on to completion. Friend, that's a word to you today. God has begun a good work in you, and he will complete it. You don't have to complete it. You just have to be faithful to God and love him with all of your heart, and he will complete his purpose for you. We've got Philippians 2:5 through 11. This is really central to the book. Highlight it, bracket it. This is a big central poem here. And it's the Christ hymn, emphasizing Christ's humility and exaltation. We've got Philippians 4:6 through 7 that says, don't be anxious about anything. And finally, the verse that you and I can quote together, right, which is Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So as you go about your week, I want you to quote that over yourself, that no matter the difficulty that comes, that you're finding joy through the Spirit and declaring, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Email me at Jasmine Brady, or just Jasmine at regenerationnashville.org. Find me on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week. God bless.